we really wanted the term Seakeeper to be synonymous with gyro stabilizers. And it worked. It is the Kleenex of tissues or the Google of a search engine. One of the crowning moments was we watched one of the big marine influencers on social media panned through, it was yellowfin, and there was a quick gyro installed. And it was like, and there's the Seakeeper, and they kept going, and we were like, we've made it.
You're listening to the Rising Tidecast, the podcast for sharing the stories, the lessons, and all the good stuff from legends in the marine industry. Welcome to the Rising Tidecast. I'm your host, Steve Goebel from Rising Tide Film, and today's guest is Kelsey Barrett. She's the director of brand and creative at Seakeeper, where she spent the past 8 years helping build one of the most recognizable brands in the marine industry. From starting in a communications-only focused role to now leading a creative team across 2 global product lines. She has been at the center of almost every bold move Seakeeper has made in marketing, including one of my favorites, the boat show Trim Tab Trash Cans, which I'm very excited to hear more about. Kelsey, welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So good to have you on. So I always love to know kind of where the water and boating entered your life, because that does determine, I think it pulls us to the industry sometimes, and sometimes it's just a source of enjoyment. But where did that happen for you?
I really had no choice in the boating lifestyle. My mom grew up in the Bahamas. She used to take a boat to and from school. So she is super boaty. We had boats my whole life. There was a period of time where she raced Hobie cats. So she was competitive and would take me out on the sailboats. We moved up to power boats. And then there was a time in between where we didn't have a sailboat or a power boat, but we still had a canoe.
Cool.
And I vividly remember we canoed to an island for Easter. And I was terrified as a little kid that the Easter Bunny wasn't going to find me. Turns out Easter Bunny also has a boat and was able to get my Easter basket to the island. So
amazing.
She is, kind of my inspiration for all of the boating stuff. She actually just completed the Great Loop. There was a big write-up on her in Power Motor Yacht magazine. So I was pretty destined to be in the industry in some way, somehow.
That's awesome. Well and truly in your blood. That's amazing. Probably better that you didn't have the canoe during the transport back and forth to school.
Yeah.
I know you started in Seakeeper 2018, and before that, PR agencies, Bonnier's Fishing Group. That doesn't seem like an obvious path to being the one in charge of brand and creative at a company like Seakeeper. So before Seakeeper, what was your vision for your career? Do you have a plan?
I thought I had a plan and I was wrong. I went to the University of Florida and I thought for sure I was going to be a marine biologist. I wanted to save large marine mammals, possibly be a large marine mammal veterinarian. Well, then I took chemistry and I realized I'm not so sure I want to continue down this path. The thought of cutting into things really makes me kind of queasy, just not so cut out for it. So I took kind of a look at what am I good at and what do I like doing? And I landed on writing. So I thought, okay, well, how do you get a job in writing? You don't a lot of times unless you're a small minority. And that's how I came across public relations and communication in general. And how do you kind of craft the right message and reach the right audience? But could I do it for a similar purpose? So when I was in college, I interned for the Sea Turtle Conservancy and really wanted to go that route. My boyfriend, now husband, got a job in Orlando. So I kind of had to pivot and get a job in a certain location, which Orlando is in Florida, but it isn't exactly coastal. I started working for a PR agency just because that was, kind of what I could easily get. And one of my friends worked at Bonnier Corp, but she worked in the off-roading motorsports kind of section. And she was like, hey, we're hiring for a marketing manager in the fishing group. And that was kind of my foot in the door back into the marine industry. It's where I wanted to be. It wasn't in the conservation side of the world, but it was still ocean related. They were based in Winter Park. So I started working with the fishing group, Saltwater Sportsman, Sport Fishing, Marlin, Saltwater Seminar Series, Sport Fishing Television. They had kind of that whole world at the time. Most of those brands have now been sold to Fire Crown, but Marlin is still part of Bonnier. I was there for just over 2 years. And my past boss at Seakeeper was advertising through all of those publications. And so she was looking for a communications manager at the time. We got connected through somebody else that I worked with, and kind of the rest is history. And so then I have shifted and moved and developed into different roles at Seakeeper, thanks to her kind of taking a shot on me. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think you're talking about Maggie too,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maggie's awesome. I
She
spoke to
is.
her once at a boat show and I was like, you can tell somebody's just a great human.
She
That's
is
Maggie.
wonderful.
Yeah. I guess so there wasn't a job ad. It was more of a like you seeing an opportunity and also them Maggie seeing an opportunity in you. But day one, Seakeeper was a different company, different environment than it is now. So what did that look like day one for you? What did your job entail as the communications only kind of role there?
So at the time, Seakeeper was based in California, Maryland, not California, but Southern Maryland.
Right. Didn't even know. That's amazing.
Right next to Hollywood, Maryland, shockingly.
This is a wild thing. Fun facts about Maryland you wouldn't
truly,
think about. Yeah.
When I saw where their locations were, which was at the time Moton, Pennsylvania, which I had never heard of, and California, Maryland, I thought, California. So my first week, I flew to California, Maryland, and met with the team. There were 4, maybe 5 people on the marketing team at the time, all based out of Maryland. So I was except the events person, our event manager, who is still our event manager. She was down in Fort Lauderdale. But I was one of the only people kind of on the team that would be working together that was going to be remote. So that was a little bit strange. I was coming in as a manager to somebody who had already been reporting to Maggie. So it was kind of just a different layout than where we're at now. We were a much smaller company. We only had the Gyro product. That was all based out of Moton, Pennsylvania. We've now since moved to Leesport, Pennsylvania, which is just down the street, and we're in one big location. So shortly after starting in Maryland, I went with a couple other people who had just started at the time, and we went toward the factory, and it was like Pennsylvania in January. So it was absolutely not a marine industry feel for that first, couple of weeks. But largely I was responsible for communication. So I was writing content. I was writing our internal newsletters and dealer newsletters, things like that, which have since evolved drastically. And I was pitching media. And a lot of when I came into Seakeeper, they had moved away from working with a PR agency. They thought that bringing someone in-house who could really kind of envelop themselves in the world of Seakeeper and learn the technology and learn the product could do a better job at pitching it to media. And we had been at the time relatively well known in the marine industry space, and we wanted external coverage. So I was really focused on getting non-endemic coverage. So we were covered in the Wall Street Journal, we were covered in Wired magazine. So I think we were decently successful at that, and then just kind of moved up.
I think it's amazing the whole like bringing someone in-house that is the right fit, that lives and breathes the brand, that becomes like, all the things for the brand and promoting it. Was that the time where there was the rebrand happening as well?
So that was actually that was 2014. So Maggie led the rebrand of kind of the entire Seakeeper look that you know today. And then I've just kind of taken it from there. But that was Maggie's baby, was that total rebrand from our old look.
Being alongside Maggie and carrying that rebrand forward, what do you think the decisions about the Seakeeper brand have been hard to make as you've evolved?
I mean, I think one of the biggest ones, and it's something we're still battling today, we really wanted the term Seakeeper to be synonymous with gyro stabilizers. And it worked. It is the Kleenex of tissues, or the Google of a search engine. I think one of the crowning moments was we watched one of the big marine influencers on social media panned through, it was yellowfin, and there was a quick gyro installed. And it was like, and there's the Seakeeper, and they kept going, and we were like, we've done it. We've made it.
That's awesome.
And so that was kind of the goal in making the Seakeeper name a household in the boating industry name for stabilization. We wanted to own the space with our brand. And we've put a lot of time and effort and money, and every single salesperson who joined the company at the time, they got a presentation introducing them to the marketing department and letting them know kind of what resources we would provide. And there was a Gyrant slide that said, it is not a gyro, it is a Seakeeper. And it was like, commit this to memory. I don't ever want to hear you call it a gyro at a boat show. Well, fast forward to 2022, our company name is our product. They're one and the same. And we launched a new product. Well, what do we name that product that can build off the clout that Seakeeper has already garnished, but not create so much confusion in the marketplace because it's using the name of a totally different product. But it also provides stabilization, but in a different way. And so that's kind of a conversation that we had to have really, really seriously into that 2022 when we launched Seakeeper Ride. And we're still having to this day. And I think there could be still further evolution of our various names in the future to help kind of create that differentiation without losing kind of like what makes us known
and special. And I think you told me as well that some of even the competitors that are in the space, they thank you for the marketing that you do because, it brings awareness to the whole industry and you're kind of doing that job for them. So I'd be interested to know, like, number one, how does that feel? What does that tell you about what you're doing? But then also, does that, for you guys and for what you do you see that as a kind of like a burden or a weight, or is it like a gift?
I think it's kind of twofold. So I think it is, like they say, imitation is the greatest or most sincere form of flattery. When people in our space do what we're doing, sometimes you feel a little bit of like, come on, like come up with your own ideas. Like I spent hours thinking of that, or I paid a lot of money to have that created. Do your own thing. You feel that kind of way about it. And then you also feel like I must be doing something right if they can't think of anything better and they want to do the same thing that we're doing. So kind of that copying can make you feel both ways. I don't feel any weight of responsibility for the industry, but what we do want is we want stabilization to be air conditioning in cars. You used to have roll windows. You used to have air conditioning was an option. It was not the standard feature. And you'd be pretty hard pressed to find a car now without automatic windows and without air conditioning being an obvious. That is what we want for the stabilization industry.
If you think about comparing it to air conditioning in cars, which I think is a wonderful example, and you think about your growth too, like I think you grew something like 30% annually between 2013 and 2022. So it's huge.
Yes.
And
year over year.
Yeah, it's insane. So the interesting part of that is like, so you're marketing towards a future that isn't there yet. So the Jetsons, right? So how do you do that? How do you market a product that's genuinely changing boating, but like your vision is so much into this is what's going to be in the future for boating in general, and we're going to help it get there?
It's a hard thing to do. It's hard to be in a position where you're trying to create your own industry. Essentially, you're trying to create your own category of products and you want them to change the way that boating is in the future. And I think kind of similar when you go back to, I'm standing in the elevator and there's a competitive product name on the shirt and they see mine and they thank me for what we're doing in marketing. I think, the other part of that is I'm so thankful to be at a company that provides the budget, provides the freedom, allows you to fail, lets us do that so that we can figure out what that looks like in the future. Not all those companies are as entrepreneurial spirited or as nimble or as flexible to be able to say, I dropped $60,000 on an augmented reality headset experience that didn't work out. That's a massive amount of marketing budget to just like flush down the toilet. And that freedom and allowance that Seakeeper gives us. Now, you do have to learn from your mistakes. You can't continue to repeat the same thing. But that is what allows us to continue to push forward and continue pushing the envelope and try new things and be in unexpected places because we're allowed to spend. And that's what, the guy in the elevator was like, we just don't get enough budget to even attempt some of the things you guys are doing, which is great for everybody. But a lot of what I think is going to propel us into the future is like experiential marketing. We have to get people on boats to try the product. And that is the hardest logistically and most expensive to do.
Totally. And I think there's two big things I want to ask more about. Number one is like the whole, like, we don't have the budget for it could be a very real thing, but it also is like a allocation of and a belief of the people that are setting the budget in what potentially this could do, and also the capabilities of the team and the freedom, like you mentioned, to try new things and to experiment and understand that not everything's going to work. So that's really interesting. And I'd love to know, like, what is it about Seakeeper that's different in that respect?
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't worked for any of the other companies, so I can't say what they're doing differently than we are. But I think one of the things that's really necessary is you have to have leadership support. You have to have the support from the top that says, yes, that amount of money does make sense for us to spend on marketing. And I think, for instance, Andrew is our CEO and we've worked closely since I started. He doesn't like print advertising. I think a lot of executives don't like print advertising because there's no direct ROI on it. You can't say that print ad sold this product and they're expensive. You take out one print ad in a magazine and you're thousands of dollars in for no measurement. There's very little that you can measure. We're measuring what we can, but sometimes you pay for awareness that may or may not make sense, and you may or may not ever know if that at all contributed to somebody moving to your website or making a purchase or even determining between, reading an article.
Saying yes to ideas is a big thing, especially when like some of the ideas and some of the marketing that I've seen you guys do, it's not like, okay, we have to do this standard print ad to look kind of like everyone else and do this. But, the approach you take, I think, is different. Like the thing I mentioned in the beginning, in the intro, like the branded trash cans. I'd be very curious how you get to yes for something like that. And even if we use that as an example, like what did that process look like for you guys internally?
I mean, I think that is where the autonomy comes in. I don't have to ask for a yes. I get to create and decide and make some of those decisions as the department leader. And before being the director of brand and creative, I was the director of the full department. And we've recently split it up to grow. But when it came to, with the print ad example, I know Andrew doesn't believe in print ads. I know if tomorrow I said we're pulling all of our print ads out, he would high five me. I mean, but I don't think that that's necessarily the right move. I do find value in the awareness. I do find value from a PR side and having a relationship through the ad side. So there's a little game played there too, but he's not stopping me. He doesn't think that the money spend is worthwhile and he doesn't necessarily believe in it, but he isn't stopping me because I do. I think that's incredibly unique and important.
It's a huge quality, like an amazing quality of a leader to empower the people that he trusts with the brand and with the different roles, like to, hey, do your best work.
And he's happy to provide feedback and he's happy to, there's things that he feels more strongly about than others, but he absolutely wants you to try things and do things. And, he'll say, that's not what I would do. You do what you think is best. And you've got to kind of figure out where in the middle is the right answer. But you do get to go with your gut. So when it came to the trash can advertising, the cost, not an issue. That was in my budget. It was actually an idea that started with one of our sales team members. And he said, we should tell people to throw, trash the tabs. And I was like, oh my gosh, we can use that. We can use that wide. So we started with Palm Beach. Actually, the Palm Beach Boat Show starts today. Mm-hmm. They will be there again. So
awesome. Something that some video for this episode. That's perfect. Yes.
We will repeat. What I needed to check on for approval there was, will you let me trash? I'm not trashing another brand. I'm trashing another product. From a morals perspective, are you guys good with that? Are you guys okay with that being part of our branding? And that was a conversation, but it was a conversation and it wasn't it's kind of a give it a go. Let's see what happens.
I love that. And I think the reason that is the example that stood out to me is because it felt like some of that older boating marketing that gets shared around on social media by friends that aren't in the industry that send me old Evan Ruda ads and stuff. It's when brands occasionally took a stab at each other's brands or they said something edgy that hit perfectly with their clients but offended other people.
Right.
And it's not that, but that's why I loved it, because you declared war on an enemy, trim tab, right? And put that as the old way of boating and stuck your flag in the ground and said, this is the future. This is how it should be. And you called attention to a problem that some people had or some people didn't even know they had. And I think that's amazing to be able to do that in a way that's still on brand for you guys. And I think it's part of that thing that we spoke about earlier before this call was, how Seakeeper is not very corporate in a lot of ways. You told me about wanting to do guerrilla marketing, more of it. So what does that look like? And what does that actually mean on a random Tuesday in the brand department?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done a lot of it. It's something I want to do more of. Because we're a global company, a lot of what we can do from a corporate perspective has to be far-reaching. It's really hard to say, I'm based in Tampa, so I want to run a campaign in Tampa. And because then you've got people in Fort Lauderdale and Destin and Jacksonville that are like, well, why didn't you run that here? Why aren't you driving business to my dealership? Since we don't sell direct, we are either driving business to builders or we're driving business to dealers. So we have to be really conscientious of who our customers are and that we're not treating anybody unfairly and that we're making a maximum impact for all of our dealers the best that we possibly can. So that is digital advertising and events and awareness, et cetera, on far-reaching things. I would love to get to a place, and we've got a couple ideas that we've batted around, trying out a really hyper local market, guerrilla marketing, where somebody, I don't know, you set up a tent over the bed of your truck and you bring donuts and coffees at 5 a.m. to a local boat ramp. And you talk to people who are using their boats, because all of the different touch points we have with people, print or digital or an event. Well, what if you're in the industry and you've got a bunch of money, but you're not in the industry? So you use your boat, but you're not reading the forums, or you're not ordering, you're not subscribed to the magazines. You might get our digital ads, but your digital ad is just such a low touch point. You don't get to spend time with anybody. The likelihood that they click through is slim to none. It's just such a low touch. But if you could meet someone and you could say, actually, we've got our boat on the dock. Before you launch your boat, let me take you out for 20 minutes. I'm going to give you breakfast and coffee. And is that a way to reach people who aren't already really enveloped in the marine space? How can you be more present at local tackle shops? How can you be at the boat ramp? How can you be at the sandbar? What are the ways that you reach people in those hyper-local areas? And if we can prove that that can work, does the time and effort expended by the employees warrant the return? And if it does, how do you expand it? How do you grow that? How do you do that on a macro level when, we have maybe 10 salespeople for the entire, let's call it Ride brand. They cannot be at a boat ramp every single weekend, or I believe their families will probably fall apart. So how do we make that a reality? And I think that's a really fun challenge to try and figure out.
It's a really cool approach too, because it builds the community, which we know how valuable that community is. But then also it goes back to the experiential marketing that you were talking about as something that's being so important. And I think as we get more into being overwhelmed with the noise of all the AI ads and everything else, that those personal connection touch points are going to be even more important. So
they're real. Yeah. There's a real person there. There's a connection. You've got a phone number. So many things. I got a new Samsung dishwasher. Trying to get a hold of Samsung was a nightmare. It's just, there's a third party who did the delivery and does the installation. And if there's an issue, it's really difficult to address. And so we want to make sure that we don't lose the human element in connecting with our customers, whether they're in the buying purchase or that they already own one of our products. We want to be available. We want to have the support people in place to help them through any questions, issues, whatever may arise. They just want to chat.
Yeah. It's so, accessibility to feel like you're being supported is, such a huge thing, especially when you're making a bigger purchase, right? So anything that adds to that, I think, is amazing. What I also love the challenge, I think, with what you do is that, the Seakeeper, it changes life on the water for people, but they have to find out about it first. So that's a great way to do that. And, most, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but most people buy a Seakeeper not to prevent seasickness, because that's, one of the rolling side effects, but for the overall boating experience. And if you think about it, it's not like, in marketing, you want to try to hone in on a singular problem and show how you solve it and create messaging around that. But that is a broad problem, and it's very much a big solution that you guys provide. So I'm curious, with the campaigns that you guys create or the moments that you create, was there a moment or a story that you felt like, oh, we cracked the code on this? This is when it felt right.
We did some research to figure out what was right. So we've done marketing that speaks specifically to seasickness. But when we survey our audience and we survey the owners that we do have, they largely say it's about comfort. It's comfort and it's performance. And so we market performance over just about anything else, because we know that with our technology, We provide the absolute most performance possible in the smallest, lightest, and most power efficient package. So there's other gyros out there, there's other transom mounted systems out there, but we know that ours is going to outperform every single one of them every single time without a single doubt in anybody who works here's mind. And that is what our customers have told us is important to them. So there is a seasickness factor. Seakeeper Gyro will help with seasickness, but it seems to be that that's not what people are interested in. So learning that space, learning what they're interested in, what they like about it. And it's hard too, because from a marketing perspective, I want to take a look at what the consumer is saying to us. Internally, we know, so, Seakeeper Ride is a really good example. Seakeeper Ride eliminates underway, pitch, roll, and yaw. It also deals with the leveling of a boat. So if people walk to one side, it's not going to tilt. It improves your whole shot. So getting up to getting up on plane faster where you never lose sight of the horizon, and then coordinated turn. So when you turn on the boat, it's going to take out about 50% of the bank just to make it feel a little bit more natural and more comfortable. From a technology standpoint, eliminating pitch, roll, and yaw is the most impressive differentiator that we have. It is the hardest to do from a software perspective and a hardware perspective. And it was what took us so long to come to market. Coordinated turn, whole shot, like list control, piece of cake. From a consumer perspective, pitch, roll, and yaw elimination is really difficult to comprehend without having experienced it. And the other things are problems they're experiencing that their regular trim tabs are not doing for them. We only want to talk about pitch, roll, and yaw, and can't forget that the market is saying these things are important to us too. And competitor X and competitor Y are talking about them. So we're considering those. And we're like, wait. But have you seen the pitch, roll, and yaw elimination? And what do their performance reports say? And they can't comprehend it. And so we're having to take our own interpretations of the product and our own desires to get certain messaging and certain features out there into account without forgetting what the market is telling us, and finding that sweet spot of how do you talk about 5 features all at the same time is
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
Unless you have a brochure. And in most places you don't get that. So how do we do that? And, you were talking about the trash cans and that kind of like old school, we're about to come out with a digital ad campaign that says, it starts with like an elevator music and it's got an old black and white picture and it just says, not your daddy's trim tabs. And it's kind of taking that idea of, okay, what are all the things that, here's all the things we want to talk about. Mm-hmm. Here's the things you guys are interested in. And how do we create something that speaks to all of that with 4 words?
That seems super fun and a great challenge to continually try and like find new ways to solve and reach people. Because I think the biggest thing is like getting on and experiencing it, right? And then all those things become apparent on what they mean and what they will mean for a day out on the water.
And kind of going back to our previous conversation about what is Seakeeper doing differently, we've heard from some other companies in the industry, not necessarily in the stabilization space, but we have boats and captains on staff. We have a captain specifically who works for the marketing department in a boat that he manages under our events arm, that if there is a media person, an influencer, a customer that wants to get on a demo, we've actually got 2 boats, one in California and one in Florida. We have the flexibility to put our captain on a plane, send him to California and get him on a demo ride for the media. And that sort of flexibility and the ability to allow people to experience your product like that is something that I do think is very unique to Seakeeper that not a lot of other companies get to utilize.
You mentioned influencer, and I think that's an important thing to talk about as well, because correct me if I'm wrong too, but Seakeeper, the Gyro, and Seakeeper Ride, 2 very different products, 2 different price points. Harder for doing a deal with an influencer on a Gyro, on a Seakeeper, than a Seakeeper Ride. So I guess how have you leveraged influencers in helping grow Seakeeper Ride?
So we were working with Gunpowder, which is our agency. I got hired to replace an agency and then I brought on an agency. They're wonderful. And they have been a real partner to us in coming up with the ideas and figuring out how our influencer program could work. We started with just working on Ride. We had a certain amount of budget that we were going to allocate to giveaways in some way. So they came up with kind of a ranking system based on what an influencer's reach is, what their engagement is, what platforms they're on, where we need to be, what types of people we're looking to reach. And so they kind of go through this report card process with the agency, which could determine, do we give them a system for free? And what does a year-long contract of content look like if we've given them a system? Sometimes that requires additional work on cost on our part that would come out of that budget. And sometimes if it's an influencer that doesn't have a boat, but they might have an audience that is interested, it's just getting them on a demo. It's a one video, hey, we're going to take you out on this and we'll give you a small monetary compensation for you coming out and shooting this one thing. Maybe it's at a boat show. Maybe it's somewhere local to them that we can bring the boat to. Maybe it's with a group of influencers, kind of on like a press trip sort of feel. So there's all sorts of ways that we can work with people. If it isn't giving them a free product, it's giving them an experience, or maybe it's giving them a greater discount. They're willing to invest some and we can provide 50% or whatever. Then we decided, okay, this is working for Ride. We like how this program is working. How can we do it with Gyro? We can't give someone a Gyro. I mean, it would eat up a large portion of the budget. Plus you have to have someone install it, which is another cost. So how can we, now that Gyro is pretty established, there are people out there who have them. How do we find those people? How do we find the people who already have gyros, who are already out there boating and talking about it, to how do we get a partnership with them? There is I guess I probably shouldn't totally talk about it yet because it's not fully complete, but like we're talking to somebody who's in the country music space, and he happened to post about the fact that his boat was getting a Seakeeper. We had no idea about it until we saw it on social media. So it's like, well, okay, this is someone we want to reach out to. This is someone who has a platform. They are in the right space. They do reach the right audience. How do we get some kind of partnership with them? And so that's how we're approaching it differently from the Gyro side.
Yeah, it's amazing. Two things. I think one of the things that I've heard as well from other brands about influencers and finding the right ones, right, is the match to your brand as well, which I'm sure is on the scorecard. I think we work and live in a very fun industry, but also from the brand side of things, like I think you have expectations of what you can and can't say and how you present yourself. So that being a challenge, is that something that's part of a challenge of finding the right people for you as well?
That is a challenge of finding the right people, and that is a part of their contract.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot do a myriad of things. Prior to the current influencer program we had what we called an ambassador program when I started at Seakeeper, that was started before me. And it took the idea of finding a customer who already had invested in the product, putting requirements around them, and then paying them a monetary cost each year for a certain amount of content. And through that process, we didn't really there was a contract, but it was less.
Loose. Yes.
And one of the influencers or ambassadors at the time, I want to say it was like an election year, and it was wild.
Yes.
The posts that went up about the election. It does not matter what side of the fence you are on. His posts were. I was like, oh no, no. Yes. And when I reached out to him about it, he was angry. Texts, cursing, that really gave me some pause. That was like, I don't even know if I want to work with these people anymore. Yeah. I don't think influencers are for me. And so that, I got a little bit of cold feet going into this new influencer program of like, this could happen again.
Well, thinking about like a practical tip maybe for someone either in a brand that's looking to hire an influencer or someone who wants to maybe build their presence as an influencer and eventually work with a company like Seakeeper, what are those things, those qualities that you look for in a successful partnership?
I think that they've got to have an idea of who they are. It can't just be willy-nilly. There's got to be some sort of plan behind it. Are you focused on YouTube or are you focused on Instagram? What is your content strategy? Are you creating long form content? Are you creating short form content? Why? Where have you seen it successful? Are you monitoring what's working and what's not working? And really having to become a social media expert, not just a fishing expert, because just being a fishing expert isn't necessarily going to get you a large reach. Similar, like you can't do too much brand coverage. Right. I want the integration to be natural and I want you to be excited about our product. Our product is a hidden product. The gyro is installed below the deck and the ride system is in the water. So you are going to have to talk about it. You think of kind of Yeti as the brand, that pinnacle brand that makes brand content that isn't overly in your face. Like, I'm drinking from my Yeti cup as
Yes.
I am literally drinking from my Yeti cup.
It's the
But
example. It's always the example. Like
it's
they
right.
are.
They
Yeah.
do an excellent job at content. We can't do that same thing because our product can't be naturally integrated into a shot or into conversation. There has to be some discussion about it. But there's been a couple influencers who we've not worked with because they're overdoing partnerships where they're talking about a boat brand that we know is not, the most famous popular boat brand in the world, but they're talking about it as if it is. And it's like, this just doesn't feel authentic.
Yes. I was
So
going
you've
to
got to
say.
be authentically yourself, and you've got to know who you are and what your plan is before you can rope a brand in to pay you money.
Right. That's great advice. I think there's so many nuggets in there, and the authenticity thing stands out probably the most. Like, because that's probably why people follow you and why people would take your word for something over someone else's, is because they know that you're not trying to slog something or sell something to them that's not going to be the best for them. It's just for you. And that's, I think, from someone who does a lot of video content and editing, that is more apparent to me. Maybe it's apparent to everyone, but I think that always kind of stands out as something that's obvious.
I think communication too is another thing that really stands out to me. And I would say this about every industry. I mean, if you get work done at your house, I love getting a text that says, this is who's coming to your house and what time they're going to arrive that morning. That's rare. In this industry, I'll mention by name, Chris Collins is somebody that we work with as an influencer with Mission Boating. He sends us a very professional, edited, here's what I'm going to post. That, what do you think of it? Allows us the opportunity to make edits. It is timely. It is, hitting on the topics. He's asking for messaging. He's learning the messaging. You can see the effort being put in, and the back and forth communication is efficient and effective. That alone makes somebody successful to work with. And that's rare. A lot of these people in our industry are boaters first, content creators second. To be one and the same is difficult to do. You can't just be into fishing and think that it's going to be really easy to work with a brand.
Yeah.
You do have to give the brand some say, and you got to be really communicative about how you're putting their message out there.
Yeah, that's huge. I think one of the things I hear a lot as well for my work is the people appreciating, the brands appreciating the planning and the understanding of like, wow, okay, you're really invested in this doing well in us, and knowing that being from the outside, like, similar to bringing the PR role or a communications role inside for that same kind of product or brand knowledge. If you can find somebody that has that same interest in you, but is just not inside, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah. And that eliminates the risk for the brand too. I mean,
totally.
It's hard to go put your logo out there on all these different people who you can't control what they do and what they say like you can with your internal employees. It's a little bit scary. And so finding those right people is really important for the brand and for the influencers to maintain their partnerships too.
Yeah, huge. The other thing I think is really interesting is about what you said about that is it's basically like an invisible thing. And I think when we spoke about it, you said it really well. If it's doing its job right, no one knows about it. I mean, creating campaigns and everything around something that's hidden and not really there, that's another challenge for you guys. Obviously, you can do side-by-side comparisons and all that stuff. But from the outside, like, I see this as like an obvious, there's a before and after, there's a thing. But what are those challenges that you have internally in coming up with these things and the ideas behind the marketing that most people wouldn't think about or not understand?
I think from that kind of invisibility perspective, getting boat builders to talk about it and focus on it. When somebody comes out with a new boat model, they are showing off a lot of different features, what they've changed for the new model year. And we want them to be like, and it has a Seakeeper. We want them to shout about it, which is an unrealistic expectation from us. But of course, we're biased. So that's what we hope for. So there are, Seakeeper works with 300 boat brands, and every single one of them has a different personality from a brand perspective and a different way of marketing their products. Working with every single one of those people to say, have you put this on your standard or optional list on your website? Do people know that a Seakeeper is available on this certain model? And how are you listing it? Are you listing it as the Seakeeper one? Or are you listing it as Gyro? trying to get our brand in that space is difficult. When they put together their brochures, when they go out on a photo shoot, can you open the hatch and make sure that the gyro is in one photo that you get during this photo shoot, even if you don't put it on your website or use it in any of your materials that we could use on social? Making it a regular thought in their mind that it is a feature on their boats that we want them to focus on and are willing to kind of participate in how they gather that content. When you go to a boat show, we've developed these clings. So they're, yay big. I think they're 10 inches in diameter. It's a circle cling for Seakeeper, and it's kind of looks like a baseball diamond for Ride, that say Seakeeper optional or Seakeeper standard. And we walk around the boat show, every single boat show, with stacks of clings. We spend so much money on ordering clings because they all get thrown out after the show.
Yeah.
And you got to walk up to the builders and ask if you can put them on your boats. In the US, it's a lot easier to do. In Europe, they're like, nope, your colors are too bright. That's too big. We don't feature our partners like that. We would never let you put a cling on our boat. Okay, well, what would they let us do? Would they let us, a little printed sign, all in black and white, that can sit up on the deck? There's so many different requirements, and having to work with 300 different partners to figure out how can I at all get in on their marketing of this boat is a challenge that we are regularly trying to address for both brands.
Yeah, that is huge. I wouldn't think that, but you think it is 300 individual problems that you have to try to solve and relationships to manage. That's massive. And also, I would imagine too, from like a boat brand, a manufacturer, like they have a lot to promote about their brand as well. And there's probably a list of features that they love and that are new and whatever they want to promote. And the Seakeeper being an addition, I think is such a great thing. What made me think of that too is like, Seakeeper, I think Seakeeper Ride and Seakeeper has changed the game in many ways. One of them that I've heard a lot about is basically like it's made maybe not the best riding hull really great. Yeah. Right. So that in itself is like changing the game and what's possible as far as looking at boat brands. If you put a Seakeeper Ride on the back, it actually rides really well and doesn't pound or doesn't. Yeah.
But the other challenge of that is a boat builder is never saying, this hull didn't ride that great before.
No. And the internal talk, or the industry talk, maybe.
Right. Exactly. But as the brand, you are touting your pros, not your cons. And so when we think of catamarans, we just launched Ride for catamarans, trying to write a press release in which we didn't offend any of our partners by talking about the drawbacks of catamarans. So a catamaran tends to turn kind of flat. We don't want to put down a catamaran. There's a lot of people who love catamarans. So from a partner perspective and a customer perspective, we don't want to say, well, here's all the problem with catamarans that this product solves. And so when you have a product that is solving a problem of another product, but that product's your partner because you need that integration, it's a delicate dance to talk about the ways that your product can provide benefits to the other one. And it makes that messaging challenging, but interesting to always find the best way to reach people with the message that you think that they need without first turning them off to your message.
And especially because your messaging is not vanilla. Like it is a little bit like
technical.
Yeah. Well, also like, yes, it's technical, but like, you're not just saying the standard, right? You're finding interesting ways to get people's attention in the content that you put out there. And also having a fine line to dance and relationships to manage. So yes, you've got a few stacked challenges there.
We're making it work. So far, so good.
That's awesome. Well, you told me a story about walking into a room basically where nobody knows Seakeeper. And Seakeeper has a lot of clout in sport fishing industry, yachting. And so you had a recent partnership with a new boat brand, in a category most people wouldn't think of when they think Seakeeper Ride. I want you to take me back to that show in Minneapolis, back to January. It's negative 21 degrees.
Yeah, so we just launched this January a partnership with Barrett Boats, who is installing Seakeeper Ride on the first ever pontoon application, which is huge for us. That's an industry, that's like a whole other part of the boating industry that we've never been a part of before. And people don't know what Seakeeper Gyro is, which for us is so weird. Everybody who has been here We do have a few employees that were here in 2008 when we launched that had to get the name out there for the first time is something I've never had to do. There was always some recognition of Seakeeper. And so to walk into a room, no one cares what logo's on your shirt, you are nobody. And going to the Minneapolis Boat Show, where I was already a fish out of water, coming from Florida in negative 21 degrees, I was like scared to drive my car. But being in that room, and we would run the ride system. So the pontoon was obviously on bunks. We would run the ride system on a loop so that people would see it and notice it and hear it and be like, what is that? And it started a bunch of conversations with us. And we learned so much about awareness of Seakeeper and Seakeeper Ride in the pontoon industry, but awareness of trim tabs isn't there. We just started asking people, they'd be like, what is this? And we would say, what do you think it is? What is your first reaction? And one guy goes, maybe it's like cutting the weeds at the bottom of the lake. And we were like, oh no, we have so much work to do here. And thankfully, Barletta, they got it, right? They went on the boat, they felt it for themselves. They know that the experience is transformational. And so working with them and their team is so fun. Their whole marketing team is great. I know our engineers have enjoyed working with their team. They feel really similar to us in terms of the type of people who work there, kind of the culture. So it was a really, really good fit. And entering that market was so kind of eye-opening and really told us a lot about how much work we had ahead of us to really kind of break our way in.
Why is that new problem and challenge like the base for something that's so engulfing, like of your time and problem solving, energy, all the things?
I mean, I guess probably because I've been here for 8 years slinging gyros. So I think like when you're working on one product over and over, it's the same colors, it's the same product. A lot of our launches are revolutionary in terms of technology, but there's not much more to talk about. You know, the gyro isn't changing from model to model in any way it's almost always more power, smaller package. And there's other technology changes within there that are improving performance in various ways, but they're not necessarily always marketable. Something like pontoon industry, you know, it's the new shiny. It's an entirely new market, a new addressable market to go after. So there's a finite market for boats. How many boats are being produced? How many boats are already out there? And we've got to try and reach those people. And for gyro, it's a lot more difficult because we are established. Launching Ride in 2022, that was the new shiny and continues to be. We've got more opportunity for growth. And I think that growth opportunity is what really fires people up. So anytime that there's a new market, a new challenge, a new way to reach people, a new feature, those are the things that naturally we want to talk about and we want to dive into. And pontoon was just so out there. I mean, we're at the Innovation Awards and we won the Innovation Award in conjunction with Barletta. And we're sitting next to someone who's entered his product and he gives me his flyer. And it's like he custom fabricated this thing that you stick in the back of your pontoon and it hangs your hammock. And I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I could see myself laying there.
I could get one of those. And having grown up in the type of boating industry that I grew up in on, you know, monohull power boats, I don't know, I could kind of see myself on a pontoon.
That's right.
They're pretty sweet.
It's a whole different world. I love that about the industry too. It's like you think you get specialized in one section and all of a sudden you get introduced to something else and you're like, wait a minute, this is awesome. Where has this been my whole life?
I mean, I've never been on a center console that has a little door that you push and it pops open and it's a dog water bowl. It's like genius. Pontoons.
Ready for the good times. Yeah.
I mean, Barletta's got some very cool features.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm interested about that show. Like, obviously, it's lit the fire. It's something new. What did Minneapolis teach you that 8 years at Seakeeper didn't already?
I'd like to stay in Florida. No.
Perfect. Yes.
It was so cold.
I am not built for the north.
Yeah, that's really what I took away. I felt like my fingernails were going to pop off of my body. No, but I think what was so interesting is to kind of expand your horizons. Lake boating is not small. It's not gentle and light. It's not like an ocean light kind of idea. Talking to the people out there and what their problems are on the water, they have such a short window of good boating weather, that they're not taking the day off because it's choppy. And they're not complaining about it. They're not complaining about it being choppy, but it isn't just the Great Lakes that have the types of conditions that boaters in Florida are feeling on a regular basis. A lot of lakes have those conditions, and sometimes amplified because the water is coming off both sides, other than the natural motion from wind and whatever. It's like a washing machine. It's a harder wave pattern, I think, sometimes than you get inland shores in Florida. So I think what I learned that was kind of not to discount the lakes. Expand your thinking of what boating means, expand what your idea of a boater looks like, and make sure that your messaging and imagery and everything speaks to a wider group of people than just those people who are on the coast.
Yeah, big takeaways. I love that. Especially because you see the things you do working and you're like, okay, we've got something dialed. And you always try and think about speaking to the people that you know so well in the way that they want to hear it. And then so finding out, like, it's more about a new, exciting way of boating. Not only is it great for this venture, but I'm sure, like you said, opens your mind up for what is after this. Like, what comes next after pontoons? What do you add to the lineup or to the types of boating or right. niches within the industry? That's really exciting.
Steve, if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
Cut.
All right, this is over.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested about two more things too. Like, one is I work with a few dealers. Some of them install Seakeepers. Onboard engineering in Australia are amazing. But I know from experience, it's a challenge for many service businesses to take the time and even remember to record content, let alone like people at Seakeeper internally, if it's not for a campaign, or other dealers, because even when it's requested, it's always a busy thing. It's seen as something that gets in the way and slows the job down at times. But we've seen also what it does for the business. So it's a hard thing to go, well, you don't have to do it. Like, it's almost a necessity. The things that your product does for boating, they are amazing for showing the transformation, right? This is the before and the after, which is, it's so good. And there's so much potential to do it. And there's such a perspective shift when people experience it. But how do you combat that kind of dealer content problem? Or if a dealer was listening, if they did take the time and remember to get their phone out and film a few parts of the process, like, what have you seen work really well within your dealer network?
I think they have to want to do it. We'll never reach that dealer who's like, look, I just want to focus on the installations and I don't want to take my phone out. We're never going to reach that person, which is hard because we want it coming from all directions. My best suggestion is to hire someone internally or somebody externally to do the work for you. Focus on what you know. We cannot be experts at everything. It's why, I have a creative agency that does animations for our website. And does video work. We've got a PR agency. We've got an influencer agency. Outsourced work is excellent if you can make the right partnerships that benefit. If you can't afford to do that, the other option is to learn how to do it yourself. And we're happy to provide that, some of that guidance. Look at our pages and what we're sharing to know what kind of content we want to see, and ask questions if you don't know what you should be doing, but you do want to do more, especially for our dealers. I mean, we're a really small team. There's 10 of us total for marketing for both brands. And some of those people are in really specialized roles. We will always take out time in our day to sit down with a dealer who's like, I'm interested in marketing my business more to sell your product. Clear my schedule. I would love to. I have logged in to the back end of a WordPress website for a dealer to write on their page because they didn't know how to do it.
That's amazing.
Anybody who will ask and is willing to put in the time and effort, we will help you get there. And if you have the means to do so, get somebody to do it for you. Yeah. There's a lot of good, smart people out there, yourself included. I mean, that is the right way to do it. On board, bringing someone on who does something specialized that they don't do. I think that's a great way to approach it.
That's huge. Yeah. I think it's, if you don't show it, nobody knows, right?
Yeah.
It helps in so many ways. Just personally, like, I've seen them. Yes, it's great for them to show the Seakeeper brand and what they do, but it's also their process. It's also showing the little things. It's asking them important things that that the client wants to hear throughout the process. But it's also like a great way, I've found, as a byproduct. And the biggest benefit is attracting more talent that are great at what they do to their business because you're working on cool things.
Well, and it makes you trustworthy. If I go onto a website and there's no picture of people that are real, it's all stock imagery, I'm a little concerned that is there a real person behind this? Being able to see the process. And I think for Seakeeper, it's really important because it's a pretty major addition to your boat, getting a gyro. And I want to see what that process looks like before I decide to give my boat, which so many people are like, my boat is my baby sort of thing. I want to know that there's real people who are trustworthy people who have done this before, who know what they're doing, and taking content throughout the process of that is what shows people that you know what you're doing and you've done it lots of times.
Yeah, that's huge. And speaking of things that you know that you're doing, well, this is a little bit random, but also fantastic. And I would love to ask you, you recently became an author.
I did. It was an accident, but
well, communications, that's not a random thing, but like writing a book, that wasn't something I would have guessed you did, but it's amazing. So tell me about that. Like, what was the journey to get there? How did this all come about?
Yeah. So I have it here. It's called The Gondola's Awake. It is a children's book about my daughter. We go to Vermont a couple times a year. We adore Vermont. We went there for a wedding and just fell in love with it. And we found the place that we will go back with our family every year for all of eternity. We love it so much to go skiing in the winter, but mainly we love the summer. It is so hot in Florida in August and September. And it is an excellent time to take a week away and to be able to sit in the sunshine without soaking through your clothes. Yeah. Just certain sunburns everywhere, but you could sit out in the grass and there's flowers and you can go hiking and it's July in Vermont is incredible. And we stay at a place called the Lodge at Spruce Peak. And there is a gondola that runs from the Lodge at Spruce Peak to the base of the mountain where the ski mountain is at Mount Mansfield. And out the window, so you can take this gondola for free. You can ride it back and forth and kids enjoy just riding the gondola. My daughter's been going there, since she was a baby. And she's 4 now. And I guess it was probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now. The summer that we were there, she, from the window in her room, could see the gondolas. And at 5:00, they put them all into a building and they stopped running. And she would say, like, where did it go? And to explain to a 2.5-year-old, I just said, well, the gondola went to sleep. It goes to sleep. It's time for you to start getting ready for bed. And I was like, this is working. Gondola goes to sleep. You go to sleep. Well, she wakes up in the next morning and she runs to the window. She rips it open. She goes, is the gondola awake? And she was so excited. And so nap time that year, I'm sitting out on like our balcony and looking at the gondolas going by. And I just whipped out my phone and I just started writing. And I don't know why I did that. Her birthday was, 6 months later. And I was like, what if I made her like a little book about her experience, remembering it? It would tie us to Vermont. It would be nostalgic for her. Well, turns out if you don't know how to draw, making one book is pretty difficult because what are the pictures going to be of? So I had all these words and I was like, one thing that I like to do when we travel is find a book for my kids to bring back and we can talk about it. And it's a memory of the trip. Some of them are so bad. And I'm not to knock the Goodnight series books, but they're terrible to read as the adult reading to your child. Like, good night, Mount Mansfield. Good night, Vermont. It's just like,
it's played out. Yeah.
And that's really all that was there. So we'd never found, in all the times we'd been up there, we'd never found a really good, specific to Stowe, Vermont book. So I was like, let me just see what an illustrator would cost. And I really like a nice watercolor painting, very specific. And so I reached out to one and I got her pricing and I was like, well, I can't pay this for one book. Like, what if I got 1,000 books?
That escalated quickly.
What am I going to do with 1,000 books?
Yeah.
I've got to sell them locally. So I started with the bookstore in Vermont and reached out to them. And I was like, I know this is out of the ordinary. Could I meet with you and see if my idea for a book at all interests you? And she was on board and she was kind of a little bit like, yeah, this is weird. This has never happened before. She had some suggestions to some of the like sketches that the illustrator had done to make it more localized. I took her suggestions and she was the first person who agreed to stock it. So I've now sold a little over 500 They're sold at the lodge at Spruce Peak where we stay, where it's about. There's a bookstore, a country store, a toy store in town, in like downtown Stowe, not up on the mountain. And my daughter can basically recite it from memory. So we read it a lot.
That's such a cool thing to go from creating something out of like love and passion, and it just happened, to turning it into a commercial venture. I think it's very special. What did writing and publishing a book teach you about creativity and risk that your job hasn't taught you? Or maybe that you haven't experienced in your job?
I would say it's good to stay employed. You are not going to make a living off children's books if you are self-published. No, but I think that just the internal confidence of knowing you can do something hard, you can do something that you don't know anything about, you can figure it out, you can learn enough, you can research enough, you have access to the internet, you can do whatever you want. And that sort of confidence in yourself, to have friends and colleagues buy the book. And, somebody that I work with who's a friend has young kids, and it was her daughter's favorite book. They know me as the lady that's on the back of the book. They know my daughter's name because she's on the back of the book. And that has been really special. People in the marine industry purchasing my book to show it to their children, to then send me pictures of their kids reading it. My friends from all walks of life at all various points of my life have purchased the book and kind of come out of the woodworks to show their support, which has been really, really heartwarming to kind of feel support from around the world, from people I never would have expected it from or haven't heard of from in years, telling me that they like it and why they like it. And somebody in Tampa, I, posted in a local group about it, bought the book because they go to the Stowe area often, flew the book to Vermont to take a picture with their daughter holding the book in front of the gondola. And that sort of stuff is just like that community, and that connection has been really, really cool to see.
I was going to say that is probably one of the unexpected, amazing benefits of doing something like this, that it never intended to, but man, it shows you what the value of like building something that connects people is, right?
Yeah.
It's very special. I'm interested, you're coming from Seakeeper, your brand I massively respect is on many things, marketing being one of them. In your experience and knowing the industry so well, what do you think the marine industry gets the most wrong about building a brand?
Being stuck in their ways. Everyone's very consistent about doing the same thing and expecting different results. And I think that there's not enough creativity in the entire marine industry. I love it when people color outside the lines and do something unexpected. And if you open a magazine, every ad is a very nice running shot of a boat. And it's just done. It's like it's used, it's repeated by every brand. And if you took the logos off the ads, you wouldn't know whose it was. And so I wish there was more creativity and bathroom stall sponsorships, trash can sponsorships. I mean, go nuts. Like you can do fun stuff and be effective and spend the same amount of money. I think that's the marine industry is very set in its ways. And I think that it could use a little jolt of creativity.
What is the key to making that happen? Because I love that and I wish everyone thought like that, but
that's the magic question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
I mean, it would be around the people, right? Surrounding yourself with those kind of people that think that way and giving them the runway to experiment on stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try something and it not work and learn from it and pivot. The ability to pivot, I think, is we are constantly pivoting. We are running this direction. It's like skirt this way now. We're using this number. We're using this number. We're all over the place all the time, which makes it chaotic, but keeps it interesting and gives us the ability to operate like we're still a small company, even though we're not.
Is there something we didn't talk about, or what do you want someone to walk away with from this conversation?
Don't be afraid to try. I mean, I think that speaks to what we're doing at Seakeeper, what I did with the book. You got to just jump. Like sometimes you got to do something unexpected that you don't feel comfortable with. For me, like the thought of posting about my own book on social media, you should have seen, I'm sitting on the couch next to my husband, writing out on LinkedIn that I've published this book. And I must have written and rewritten it about 100 times because the thought of promoting myself is horrific. the idea of being someone who's like, look what I did is terrifying. But do it. Like, do it. The reactions are going to be unexpected. The success is going to be unexpected. Try it. Well, I just talked to my coworker this morning, and sometimes we pump each other up in the morning and just like, you can do hard things. So I think that's what I'd say is just go for it. Be weird, be creative, make your own excitement.
I love that. Great advice. Thank you for being on, Kelsey. This has been amazing. I'm excited to get my book. It's coming very soon.
In the mail, I promise. I shipped it.
I got a shipment notification. I can't wait. So, and this conversation has been exactly the kind that I started this podcast for. So thank you so much for being on.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, you can find Kelsey's work at seakeeper.com and ride.seakeeper.com. And if you have a little one in your life or you just love a great story about a mom who accidentally became a publisher, you can head to gondolabooks.com and pick up a copy for yourself. And everything will be linked in the show notes, including your LinkedIn, which I love following you on. And if this episode made you think differently about how you build a brand and marketing around something people don't even know that they need, definitely share it with them. I think this industry needs more of it and to hear more of it. So thank you again, Kelsey. That's it for today, and catch you on the next episode.